And what I will do now is I'll move on and introduce you to Chris and Jeff, and then pass over to them.
Well, thanks, John, and thanks to OpenAthens for the opportunity to speak. Purpose of our presentation is really to share our experience. And I understand from the organizers that there are some in the audience that are not yet OpenAthens users. So I'll give some background on our reasons for switching. And I do hope that even for existing users, some of our experience sharing will be useful as well. There's just a brief overview, sort of the easy way that you can in the OpenAthens resource catalog, sort of assign resources, the IP proxy solution, and also some of the challenges we've experienced with certain of our vendors who will remain nameless. So OpenAthens at HKBU Library, bit of background on us. We're one of the 8 government-funded universities in Hong Kong, serving around 7,000 undergraduates and 5,000 postgraduates. We made the decision to switch to OpenAthens a little bit before Swinburne in 2020, and we went live with it in 2021. And our real motivation was this desire to enhance both security and patron privacy as well. I recall when I first, because I'm not the most technically minded person, but when I was told that, oh, we have more or less a complete record of our users' e-resource access in our easy proxy server, I was not comfortable with that from a privacy perspective. So we were the first and so far only university library in Hong Kong, I should say, to adopt a SAML-based authentication for managing our e-resources, but hopefully others will follow suit in the not too distant future. So I do want to emphasize how easy it is to allocate federated resources in OpenAthens. And for users, this is a very familiar screen from the administrative interface. Proxied resources may require a bit more effort, and I'll go into that, but I do want to emphasize that the vast majority of resources are extremely easy to set up. So for those cases where IP proxies are required, that of course kind of defeats the purpose of switching to SAML authentication, because you don't get those benefits in terms of security and less complexity for the library in setting things up. And most importantly, of course, the better user experience that you get with SAML. But some vendors simply do not support it. And I should add that whenever we as a customer, we talk to our publishers, we really do ask them, like, could you consider doing SAML? Could you consider doing federated access? But there are sometimes they just don't do that. But if they do support other proxy solutions, it should be possible to set this up with OpenAthens' service as well. But the challenging vendors, sometimes they're unresponsive, or they just uninterested in exploring certainly federated access, but even setting up a new proxy, we've had some challenges. And there was one case, well, I'll share that later, but patience is a virtue though. With time, and like Swinburne, we've had excellent support from the EBSCO team. Most access issues can be resolved. It may take some time. Actually, our big example is a major Chinese language vendor. Well, probably if you're familiar with Chinese language resources, you probably know which one I mean. It took a lot of time and effort to get the authentication working satisfactorily with them, to the point where we actually had to extend our easy proxy subscription for a little bit because it was such an important resource. But we did get there in the end. And I guess the good point for that about that is that we have kind of blazed that trail. And for other libraries coming after us, they should have a better time of it. And Jeff will give you more, we'll talk more about the EBSCO perspective, because they do a lot of work with the vendors in this regard. There was one extreme case where we did drop a subscription, and that was only partly due to their lack of support for OpenAthens. And I shouldn't even say lack of support, really. It's just a total lack of response. This was a very, very small vendor, and the resource was under review anyway because of low usage. So to wrap up my part, I just wanted to say here, strength in numbers, right? The more libraries that are using this technology, the more pressure there will be on our regional vendors to adopt, this better solution. to allow our users to access e-resources. And with that, and with an eye on the time, I would like to pass it over to Jeff for the second half.
Great, thanks so much, Chris. It's always illuminating to hear it from a user perspective. As Chris intimated, we do a lot of work with both OpenAthens, our partner, and with the service providers that are out there in the world that you subscribe to, in order to make these configurations a little bit more effortless on your part. As Chris mentioned, time, patience, and timing is everything. A lot of times we are bringing new information to service provider partners in order to educate them and on the importance of some of the ways that authentication changes. We've been a partner here at EBSCO of OpenAthens going back almost 20 years now. In the last few years, really, federated single sign-on has taken on a lot more import. And then it's anecdotally, that's the way that we feel through a lot of the efforts of OpenAthens and other federations that are out there. At EBSCO, we're also a content provider. So we are members and support over 2/3 of the federations that are around the world. Federations are generally can be found in most countries, and in some countries you have to be a member of a federation to get access to some of the resources through single sign-on. So lots of different approaches to it, but in general, the idea of federation and OpenAthens is to share resources a lot more easily and with a lot more greater consistency of data. So our team that Chris mentioned, we have an implementation team that's over 50 experts that help set up OpenAthens and various other EBSCO tools that we have. We have discovery tools, we have content management systems, we have link resolvers, all things that require expertise in how to connect to those resources that are out there, the idiosyncrasies of all of the vendors that we configure on behalf of all of the subscribers for OpenAthens. And like Chris mentioned, we do a lot of feedback both to service providers, the vendors that are out there, to OpenAthens and to our own systems to improve the process and gain efficiencies based on the feedback that we get from implementation projects that we do. Like Chris mentioned, who are the problematic vendors? Are there ways to get around that? Is there normalization of data that we can provide to help with all of that? And that's really how we look at it from a holistic perspective. At EBSCO, we have the benefit of being pretty much having a worldwide footprint. So we do have local support in generally every area that you are, and we're constantly growing to support the different languages, cultures, and times that the different projects get created and maintained in. We do have a lot of flexibility as such, having that footprint. And what it's allowed us to do is evolve our systems. We started pretty organically and pretty methodically with Excel-based tools. They did the job, but there was required a lot of proactivity, a lot of back and forth that wasn't as easily collaborative as it could be. So we've evolved those tools with all the feedback that we mentioned from end users, from administrators, and we've created some organic systems of our own. We moved from Excel to these web-based tools where they're more, it helps lighten your load, shopping cart type experiences, user interfaces that we're all quite used to, suggestive suggestions for service providers, packages that we know from being EBSCO that are parts of each one of the vendors, not so much who the service provider is, but what specific packages. And that's created a lot of efficiency in terms of setting all of this up. It requires a lot of back and forth. Oh, we have an Elsevier collection. Well, which one is that out of the dozens that they offer? And certainly the tool is helpful in every part of the world. It's translatable easily into a number of different languages. And we also partnered up with, and this was one of our biggest suggestions from past projects, was we want a more collaborative approach. We partnered up with Monday.com. So what the result of that was a dashboard that's interoperable. you as customers get a dashboard where you can go in and see progress. You can communicate easily with your implementation project manager. All of this is real time. You can see what's happened since the last time you spoke. And our implementation teams will also provide you with meetings at whatever cadence makes sense to you, weekly, bi-monthly, however often you want to and can meet. We are constantly iterating this process. And to Chris's point, we do get some testimonials. Not everything is great, but we constantly strive to fix any of the processes that we find may not be as optimal as possible. But as you can see, the testimonials by and large are great. Our colleagues who work in implementation are subject matter experts, and as mentioned, work with linking extensively. They really know how to get into some of the problem situations and solve those easily for you. And in closing, just the way that we approach this as partners of yours, I think sets us all apart. We have a close and easy relationship with OpenAthens. We have a steady flow of information, and we're all interested in iterating this process. So it is really simple. There's a lot of complexity to contacting dozens or hundreds of vendors and service providers on your behalf. Coordinating that and getting through those projects can take time, and we're constantly striving to shrink that amount of time to deliver you the best product and the best user experience possible. And then that's not the end of the process. When that is finished, that turns over to our colleagues in support who are available around the clock to answer any questions you might have and to escalate any issues that you have. As we all know, authentication is the front door of your systems, and if that's not working, then that becomes a front of mind issue. So we treat that all with urgency. And I'll leave it there. I think that gets us right to, well, we might have a minute to spare, but I appreciate, yeah.
That's great, Jeff. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chris. I mean, just one question we've got in terms of the technical challenges. Chris, from your perspective, what would you say was the single biggest technical challenge that you had to overcome?
Oh, well, it's interesting. It's not really technical, John. It's just getting the buy-in from the vendor, or I'm trying not to name names here with particular vendors, but from my perspective, it was really, I couldn't even understand. I mean, the product works with Easy Proxy. Like, why can't you get it to work with the OpenAthens managed proxy? And sometimes it's just not entirely clear to me. I don't know if Jeff can supplement that at all or provide clarity.
Well, actually, Jeff, I wonder if Anton had a similar experience with the vendors. Is that something that you recognize, Anton?
We had a wonderful experience with EBSCO. Absolutely, they were very supportive and knowledgeable about all the products. It's a great time. Catherine, did you want to elaborate on that?
Well, we did have problems with particular vendors that we were trying to set up, yes.
Yeah.
And we would really like, as Chris has said, to see more vendors supporting federated access. But obviously that's not something that's possible for all vendors. Yeah. But no, we did have a really good time with EBSCO. Yeah.
I mean, Jeff, do you have some of those specific challenging vendors? I mean, I know it's something you and we spend a lot of time talking about vendors and trying to streamline that process. I mean, do you have a perspective from EBSCO?
Of course, I think that we certainly keep a running tabulation of all the vendors that we work with. We know who are problematic, or who, again, sometimes it just depends on with whom you're speaking at the vendor. You might be talking to a person that, the person next to them has done this before, and for them it's rote and easy, but it's a novel situation so we try to, we try to manage that internally in our systems and our notes, and we have the extensive notes about vendors, who to work with, who to escalate through. But as Chris, Anton, and Catherine have mentioned, some entities are just a little bit slower to bring along to understand how this is, and sometimes it's a business decision that has to get vetted through layers of bureaucracy. Sometimes it's a little bit simpler, but overall, we generally work hard to prove to the service providers that are out there, these are some of the benefits you are going to gain. It's not just something that you're doing for your subscribers and end users. And that can be one of the more effective tools that we have. And you know that, John, from multiple conversations that we have.
That's great.
But
Thank you.
absolutely.
And Belinda, you know, who is kind of
Of
one
course.
the
Yep.
global experts on OpenAthens, but Belinda has made a very good point about easy proxy certification and JISCs and OpenAthens requirement for sort of higher security protocols. There's some great comment in the chat there from Belinda. So thank you as always, Belinda. I suppose one final, so we talked about onboarding. I suppose one final question for Chris and so on, Catherine. So we talked about onboarding. Are there any particular challenges in terms of the ongoing relationship once you've gone through that setup? Are there any significant challenges that you see in running the service day to day?
Chris, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, we're doing overall. We'll take a couple of minutes if we can, because we have overrun slightly, but that just, you know, we did start slightly late. So yeah, Chris.
So do you mean just the ongoing maintenance of the system?
And how much of, you know, what does that entail, I guess?
Yeah, it entails, I want to say very little. But like when we, subscribe or cancel e-resources, we need to go in and make those changes in the admin interface. But I think versus our previous experience, we were previously EC proxy, we've had far fewer maintenance issues. And when there are issues, it's kind of a global thing. And OpenAthens takes care of it rather than our systems people having to run down and turn the server off and on again or whatever they used to do. So it's been a much smoother experience for us.
Great.
Yes.
And Catherine and Anton, is that something?
Yeah, I think also a much smoother experience for us. We have great support. We sign up obscure little publishers for a single dosage book on medicine or something, and the EBSCO support people just sort that all out. They contact the vendors, they sort that all out for us. So actually, we find it really good, and it also gives us some great statistics. So we're really pleased with all of them, how we can manage all of those aspects.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, this isn't so much of a challenge or a problem, but the next thing we wanted to see from OpenAthens, we were getting such good usage data, better than we'd ever got from Easy Proxy, broken down to our schools and departments. And the resources. It's absolutely brilliant. And I'd say the reporting engine in OpenAthens is excellent compared to many systems I deal with. The only challenge I had was it's in OpenAthens. So if I've got other teams that I wanted to set up a dashboard and access that data, I needed to grant them access to OpenAthens. So what we did was went with the reporting API and started building our own external reporting to OpenAthens. That was really the only other thing we did after launching.
Well, that's fantastic. There was a session earlier on about the reporting API, which I know will be recorded and can therefore be shared. Well, I'll stop there. I'll say thank you. Those conversations carry on in the networking break for sure, if people want to log in and register those. But thank you to all of you for speaking and sharing that insight. Yeah, that point about community, curiosity, you know, again, you've exemplified that. So thank you so much. And see everybody either during the break or after the break. So thank you very much.